Parents came back after 8 years when they heard I married a rich boss, so I played along to teach them a lesson. I'm 27, a financial consultant at a big company, and I haven't spoken to my parents in 8 years. I have an older sister, Celeste, 34, who's happily married with 2 kids. We're not super close but keep in touch occasionally. When I was 19, something happened that made me cut off contact with my parents for good. They're hardcore Catholics, taking their faith very seriously. Growing up, Celeste and I were expected to strictly follow their religious rules and live by their values. Instead of sending us to regular schools, they homeschooled us because local schools didn't align with their beliefs. They had a clear vision for our futures, either become mothers of big families or join a convent. Those were the only acceptable paths in their eyes. Celeste, being 7 years older, was their golden child. She never dated, lived at home until marriage, rarely left our neighborhood, and barely engaged with the community. At 22, they arranged her marriage to Matthew, the son of Dad's friend. They micromanaged every detail of the wedding, from the readings to the mass, even though an ordained priest officiated. Luckily, Matthew's a great guy, and Celeste has a good life with amazing kids. But seeing her married off so young made me realize I wanted something different. I was a young woman full of dreams, ambition, and a craving for independence. I wanted a career, to travel, to explore the world, not the traditional path my parents laid out. After high school, I applied to a top college in our county and was thrilled to get a full scholarship. When I told my parents, they flipped out. Dad threw a fit, yelling with judgment and disappointment. Mom wouldn't even look at me. They couldn't understand why I'd want an education when their plan was for me to follow their rules. It was heartbreaking to see my closest family reject my dreams. That fight started a growing rift that led to years of estrangement. It was clear my ambitions didn't match their vision for my life, and that moment marked the beginning of our complete fallout. College opened up a new world for me. I learned things that challenged the beliefs drilled into me as a kid, made new friends, and tasted the independence I'd always wanted. But my parents couldn't handle it. They saw my freedom and college's influence as a threat to their values. Every visit home during breaks was tense, like walking on eggshells to avoid another blowout. The gap between us kept widening, and finding common ground got harder. Deep down, I still craved their approval, but it was a pipe dream. After graduating, I was pumped about landing a job and told my parents I wanted to build a career and move out to chase my dreams. They weren't having it. They kept pushing me to get married and have kids, sticking to their beliefs. Our fights got uglier, emotions ran high, and they begged me to rethink my choices. When I refused, they told me to leave their house immediately. I was stunned by how harshly they reacted to something that made me so happy. I packed my stuff and stayed with Celeste for a few months until I found my own place. I vowed never to return to their house. I wanted to live on my terms and find success and happiness outside their rigid expectations. My choice to leave and pursue a career hurt them deeply, and they cut me off completely. When I talked to Celeste, I avoided asking about them, and she never brought them up. Fast forward to now. I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years, and 3 months ago, he proposed. We planned a simple courthouse wedding followed by a low-key dinner with close friends. I'm not into big, flashy weddings, and not being able to invite my family was another reason to keep it small. Everything was going smoothly until I got a call from an unknown number. It was my parents. After 8 years of silence, I couldn't believe it was them. They'd heard about my wedding and wanted to congratulate me. I thanked them politely, but inside, I was a mess. They asked how I was doing, and I answered vaguely. Things were fine until they asked what it's like being married to someone so high up in my company. Confused, I asked what they meant. They excitedly said they were thrilled I'd married my boss. My jaw nearly hit the floor. I had no idea where they got that idea. They said a friend told them, and they were so happy for me. I mostly stayed quiet as they gushed about how proud they were that I'd finally gotten married. Dad was eager to meet my husband and get to know him. Mom asked if I was quitting my job to focus on kids and keeping my husband happy. Their assumptions floored me. It slowly sank in. The only reason they reached out after 8 years was because they thought I'd married a rich boss, which in their eyes upped my social status. Now they expected me to be a proper wife. Their condescending tone and expectations pissed me off, but I decided to play along. I painted a picture of my life that was partly true. My husband and I do have a comfortable life, but I threw in a ton of lies, like having 20 housekeepers and a massive mansion with a pool. They ate it up, their excitement growing, especially when they begged to meet my rich husband. Their enthusiasm was pathetic, driven entirely by the lie that I'd married a boss. While agreeing to arrange a weekend meeting, I hatched a plan to teach them a lesson and make them face the pain they caused by rejecting me for not fitting their mold. Now they only wanted me back to brag to their church friends. It stung, and I was determined to show them the consequences of their actions. I talked to my husband about my plan. He was hesitant, understanding why I lied but unsure about starting their first meeting with deception. After some convincing, he agreed to play along. I also reached out to my boss, who's a woman and a close friend after years of working together. I explained the situation, and she thought it was hilarious. I asked if we could use her house for a day, and she was all in. I sent my parents the address for the meeting they were so eager for. On the day, my parents arrived, thinking they were meeting my rich boss husband. Their eyes popped when they saw the size of the house and its huge lawn. My husband and I greeted them at the door. Dad shook his husband's hand like he was trying to break it, and Mom hugged me, congratulating me on the marriage. Though my husband had doubts, he played the role perfectly, chatting casually and acting like the wealthy boss they imagined. We sat down to dinner, and they noticed the staff, arranged by my boss, serving us. Dad started grilling my husband about the house, his assets, and how I landed someone so high up. The interrogation vibe annoyed me, but my husband kept up the act, spinning a wild story about his wealth and career. It was all part of our carefully planned charade. At one point, Dad leaned in, eyes gleaming, and asked, "I've always wanted to see a classic car collection. Got any vintage rides we could check out?" My husband played along, saying he had a few, and they went to see the collection, actually my boss's cars. While they were gone, Mom pulled me aside and whispered, "We're so glad you married a rich man because we're struggling with our mortgage. We're worried we might lose the house." I froze, staring at her in disbelief. She went on, suggesting that since I'm married to a rich guy with a mansion and vintage cars, I could convince him to help with their payments. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The only reason they reached out was to mooch off my rich husband. They never cared about me. A storm of emotions swirled inside me as I waited for Dad and my husband to return. When they came back, I took a deep breath and decided it was time for the truth. I turned to Dad and asked if what Mom said was true. He hesitated, then said, "Honestly, I didn't think you'd ever get married, let alone to a rich guy. Now that your husband's got all this, it wouldn't hurt for him to share a little." My husband and I were floored. Dad explained they couldn't afford their mortgage and didn't want to ask friends for help because it had hurt his reputation. Seeing their desperation to cash in on my wealthy husband, I went for the jugular. With a sly grin, I said, "You know what, Dad? We can help with the mortgage, but on one condition: you publicly apologize for cutting me off 8 years ago and admit you were wrong, in front of the whole family and friends at a gathering we'll host." They were stunned but, with no real choice, reluctantly agreed. Over the next few weeks, I organized a family gathering, inviting relatives and close friends. Celeste had no idea about my revenge plan. She was confused about why our parents suddenly reached out after so long. I kept her in the dark, knowing her moral streak might make her spill the beans. On the day, it felt good to reconnect with extended family and meet my parents' old friends. Everyone kept congratulating me on marrying my rich boss and asking when we'd have kids. Their narrow-minded questions annoyed me, but I smiled and played along to keep up appearances. During the buzz, Dad stood up to give a toast, raising his glass and saying how thrilled he was to be with family and friends. He congratulated me and my husband on our marriage, then went on about how proud he was that I'd turned my life around by marrying a boss. He admitted he was ashamed when I wanted a career, thinking I disgraced the family, but now he forgave me because I'd chosen the path he and Mom always wanted. The room went silent. His words hung in the air, and he had no idea the evening was about to take a turn he wasn't ready for. When he finished, everyone expected me to thank him. Instead, I stood up and said, "Thanks, Dad, for the kind words, but I have a confession." The room buzzed with whispers. "Yes, I'm married," I continued, "but he's not my boss. My boss is a woman and a close friend. This house you saw? It's hers. The wealth, the lifestyle, it was all a setup. Someone lied to you about me marrying a rich boss, and I played along to see what you really wanted." The room was dead quiet. I laid it all bare, how my parents cut me off for 8 years because they didn't like my pursuit of independence and a career, but the second they thought I'd married a rich guy, they called. I revealed their real motive, needing money for their mortgage and hoping to leech off my wealthy husband. The room erupted in shock. I added that, while I didn't marry a boss, my husband and I have a great life with good jobs, all because I broke free from their control and chose my own path. The room filled with mixed reactions: shock, disbelief, understanding, and disappointment. My parents looked humiliated and exposed as guests whispered and exchanged glances. My husband and I left the house feeling satisfied, having ended the facade they'd kept up for their community. This all went down last week, and the fallout's been telling. I've gotten calls from tons of people. Most support me and admire my courage for standing up for myself. But Celeste and some relatives think I went too far by publicly shaming our parents. So, was I wrong to play along with their lie about marrying a rich boss just to set up this final revenge? Before we move to the update, hit pause and share your thoughts in the comments. I'm not judging whether I was right or wrong, but I think I had every right to do this. Yeah, I publicly humiliated my parents, but let's not forget they humiliated me first in front of the same community, even at that same event. So, I don't see any fault on my end. Now, let's get to the update. Update 1, thanks for all the feedback on my post. After reading your comments and advice, I called Celeste to share my perspective. I explained how I was only 19 when my parents kicked me out, and that trauma left deep emotional scars. Their choice to cut me off was just because I wanted an education and a different life. It hurt like hell. I told her I never judged her for choosing marriage, it just wasn't my path. I asked if she could ever turn her back on her kids for making a different choice. She firmly said, no. I pointed out that, as a mom, she should understand how awful what our parents did was. That's why I felt the need to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. After hearing my side, Celeste showed empathy for what I went through. I'd always kept my feelings bottled up, so she never realized how much I was hurting. She now understands why I did what I did. While she can't fully condone my revenge, she promised not to hold it against me. That conversation lifted a weight off my shoulders. As for my parents, they haven't reached out since, and I'm not making the first move either. After how hard I called them out, I can only imagine they're fuming. Time will tell if they reflect on their actions or just keep blaming me. For now, I stand by what I did and hope they learn something. Today, Mom called me while I was at work. She said they feel humiliated in front of everyone and that Dad's still pissed. She kept scolding me for lying, but I reminded her I only played along to expose their true intentions. She tried to justify it, saying they really thought I was finally becoming a good girl by quitting my career for family. I made it clear I'm not doing that, especially now that I'm financially stable with a promotion on the horizon. I reiterated I have no regrets, it just showed their true colors. Mom said some relatives and friends are now talking about it, with some telling them what they did to me 8 years ago was awful. That's only made Dad angrier. I didn't want to keep up the pointless talk, so I hung up mid-workday. My parents are stuck in their ways, and I'm stuck in mine. But I'm glad my confession stirred things up, not just in our family but among everyone who knows what happened. Update 2, it's been 3 months since my last update, and a lot's changed. Based on your advice, I started therapy. I realized I hadn't been dealing with my parents' rejection healthily, and the resentment was weighing me down. Exposing their motives felt good, but I didn't want to keep living with that bitterness. Therapy's been a step toward processing my past and emotions in a healthier way. My parents agreed to talk, largely thanks to Celeste's heartfelt pleas. I was hesitant, but my husband convinced me to give them a chance. We met at Celeste's house, and I stayed quiet until they spoke first. Mom started, expressing regret for our past fights, which surprised me. She admitted she's rethought things and realized how much their actions hurt me. Dad, who'd been silent, said cutting me off for 8 years was a mistake and they want to make it right. He explained their strict beliefs blinded them to my perspective. I mostly listened, but their words felt genuine, a good start. They said they sought advice from their community, which helped them see things differently. It wasn't easy, but it felt like a step toward reconciliation. Celeste was visibly relieved, staying quiet but supportive, clearly hoping for us to reconnect. Her optimism was encouraging. With time and effort, our family might heal. I'll keep up with therapy and stay open to reconciliation but proceed cautiously. For those wondering, my husband and I are doing great. Our marriage is pure joy, and he always backs my decisions. I'm lucky to have him. We're not thinking about kids yet but might in the future. For now, we're enjoying life and traveling the world together. That's the end of the story. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out our previous video linked below, and catch you in the next one.